Life's too short to drive boring cars. Don't you find it funny? In the automotive industry, everybody's talking about electric vehicles, hybrids, even 2-liter 4-cylinder turbo engines, and all the development that these engines are seeing. The conversations about good old-fashioned, tried-true V8 engines are going away. Now, you remember a lot of the old engines from the small block Chevy 350s. They were workhorses. They lasted forever. How about the big block Fords? We also can't forget the Hemi engines by Dodge. But on the other side of the pond, the Europeans were making some great engines as well. Think about Mercedes and some of the AMG V8 engines that they produced over the years. So we all start to expect high mileage, big power out of a lot of these V8 engines. But did you realize there's some real junky V8 engines out on the market today? And don't be making that mistake, because I'm going to share a list of 5 of the worst V8 engines that you're going to want to run from like the Dickens, or just be buried in debt. Let's get into it now. Now, the first one is one that we keep mentioning over and over again, but unfortunately qualifies as both some of the worst engines as well as some of the most oil-burning engines and some of the worst V8 engines on the market, and it's the wonderful BMW N63 engine like you find packaged in this beautiful machine here. Here we have a 750i. Now, you're going to find the N63 typically in anything with the 50 designation, but people buy them because they put down the numbers. Ultimately, they're a performance engine that actually outpaces a lot of the previous generation M5s, and that's why they continually sell. They're somewhat economical for V8 standards, but they put down significant performance numbers. But let's take a look at one of the examples of a vehicle that you'll find these in. And here's a 750, and we've talked about this one before. Of course, we'll notice we have some great design themes. Most BMWs are all about the style and form follows function, but here, big grills, the big mouth sausage grill right there. You'll see awesome headlights. That's BMW's later style LEDs. And they have a pretty interesting front chin, great wheels. And again, we speak of these mirrors, and BMW never forgets the details. It's all in the details. And as well, more details right there with soft touch and a large sunroof. And an oversized gas filler. How about cycling around the back? What about the LED taillights? And it's a 750, as I mentioned. So it has the 4.4-liter twin-turbo V8, and it happens to be X-Drive, so it's good in the snow. You'll see carboned-up rear tailpipes there, as well as on this side. And then if you cycle back here, you'll notice it actually has a pretty beefy stance. It definitely does make a point. And the interior is great, too. Sitting in this beautiful Q-stitch chairs makes you feel like a rock star. But unfortunately, if you don't have a rock star's payroll, you probably shouldn't be buying one of these. They guzzle oil like they're going out of style, primarily because they are a V8 engine. And there's turbos in this V8 engine. They're packaged within the V, and it's called the hot V. And what that does is makes all kinds of heat where you don't want it at the top of the engine, and starts to heat soak the heads, which then translates into melting valve guides and valve guide seals, which then, of course, start slurping oil up through the valve guides into the heads, consumes the oil, and shoots it out the tailpipe. On top of that, you have accelerated battery deterioration because of all the technology. You also have, a big one is timing chain rattle and potentially timing chain failure. Ugly. We also won't talk about all the coolant and oil leaks, because at the end of the day, you'll never keep up with all of it. Once these vehicles are 5, 6, 7 years old, you start to lose the war with repairs, and you wind up throwing in the towel, and these cars never make huge miles. And right there is a good old-fashioned GMC or Chevy pickup truck. Remember back in the day, the old 350 small block? That thing was a workhorse. Even the 302s weren't bad either. But then they started experimenting. 6.2s, we had 6 liters, we also had the 5.3, and now we're into the 5.3-liter EcoTech 3 is where the real problem is. And let's talk about it, but let's take a walk around first. I mean, trucks are very hard to come by these days. Why? Because they're popular. You can drive around in bad weather, you can go off-roading with them, you could certainly haul a lot of weight, you know, whether you're taking a boat to the lake or a camper. You can also do your little construction projects, and a lot of them now are equipped to be very comfortable inside. But here we have GMC or Chevy, either way you like it. Of course, you got the great big headlights and little fog lights here, and all kinds of different accents in the front. Trucks have come a long way. Of course, we have a strong hood on the front. And we have this great flare here. We'll notice it's all-terrain in this particular model with chrome accents here and there, and chrome. These flared fenders also look strong back here. And this one's a little bit cheesed out with aftermarket wheels, but that's okay. How about some of these where they're starting to add on these little fender flares here to keep the rocks from destroying and starting bubbling paint? Of course, around the back, we have pretty standard taillights and a step in this all-terrain GMC. You'll notice you've got a lockable box. And as I said before, you can haul a lot of weight with this. This one here has a power rear slider, so it's very versatile. And the interior are quite comfortable on these as well. Now we can get leather, sunroof, and the whole 9 yards. So what can possibly go wrong with a good old tried and true Chevy? Again, as I say, it's that 5.3 Ecotec 3. Here's some examples of some problem areas. It's that directed injected engine, which causes all kinds of carbon buildup, and that leads to a whole barrage of issues. We can get fuel injector failure. Of course, that's always pricey on any direct injected engine, as well as a four-wheel drive transfer case fails on these. Quite a frequent occurrence, unfortunately. It is in the top 5 of failure issues. And then the fuel level sensor is also a problem area. How do you like to be driving along on your long trip thinking you have a half tank of fuel left and all of a sudden, boom, you have none? Well, that is a problem, and they're a bit of a pain to repair on these too. And of course, the active fuel management is also a commonly known issue. Cycling in and out, huge problem. These engines just do not last. So as good as history is with the old GMs, the 5.3 Ecotec 3 is not one to last a long time. And the next beast of burden with some of the worst engines is the Nissan Endurance 5.6 liter V8, as you'll find in this vehicle, the Titan or the Titan XD. And they're very attractive. They've come a long way, and no one ever saw Nissan coming with a full-size pickup, but this is actually a very nice contender. However, that 5.6 is a problem. But let's take a look first. Oh, look at those beautiful headlights. And the big strong grille in line with what you're finding in the Nissan and Infiniti lineup. But here embossed, you'll see a Titan logo on there on the chrome. Very difficult to see. But you've got these great little hooks on the front, as well as little fog lights. Wonderful. How about this great little two-tone trim along all the way down? And running boards, which help smaller people get into the cabin. Of course, beautiful black chrome here, as well as there. And you've got the soft touch keyless, as well as a chrome two-tone mirror here with the nice little marker light. No sunroof on this rig, but it's still a very, very pretty truck all the way down the line. Of course, you've got a power rear slider, and I love these rear tail lights as well. Here we have a Platinum Reserve by Nissan, and it can haul a pile of weight too. You'll notice dual exhaust tips, lockable box, and a decent amount of storage capacity in there. How about the interior? Actually very nicely equipped and nicely finished, with a stepped up level of texturing in the leather seats and some great technology packed abound. But what's the problem with that 5.6 liter V8 called the Endurance? Well, there's a few things. Number one, fuel pumps have been known to go out. When they do or they run lean, they're known to take out the catalytic converter with it. They burn out, that's a huge expense. Sadly, some of these engines are known to overheat, it's happening. But the big one, of course, is the timing chain failures that they're seeing with these. They break and then there goes the engine. Huge expense once you lose your timing chain. I mean, after all, that's your piston and valve alignment, right? There's also some other electrical gremlins. These vehicles aren't all that well sorted out and certainly isn't quite as robust as what you're finding in the Toyota Tundra, which may be a better option. Either way, due to the level of failures and the catastrophes that these vehicles see, I don't see them packing on a huge amount of miles like the old classic Chevy 350. So the next vehicle on my list is this little beauty behind me that likely won't last very long, and there is a V8 engine, and it is a 5-liter supercharged V8. And there is lots of problems, but let's talk about it. Before we get into the troubles, let's take a quick look. Beautiful. And you'll notice you've got the oversized red calipers, great accents. And how about that wonderful mirror? Keyless entry, both front and back, and oversized glass panel on the roof. How about that overhang though? That looks stout, love it. How about these wonderful tail lights? Absolutely gorgeous on this Sport. And as I said, it's supercharged and it's a 5-liter V8 engine. 1, 2 tailpipes, and they carbon up. You'll notice lots of carbon on a used vehicle. But the looks of this is absolutely beautiful and mesmerizing. Look at those rocker panels flare out all the way up to leading to this wonderful hood design and this overall handsome stance that you find with the Range Rover Sport. You'll notice typical grille, Range Rover by Land Rover, and it's got some great headlights on there, and the front end is finished nicely, sculpted, beautiful. What about the inside? I don't think you'll find a nicer interior than in the Range Rover products anywhere. When these vehicles are new, they're absolutely magnanimous. They're beautiful, they're exceptionally powerful, they're wonderful, they sound great, and you're sitting like a king in the lap of luxury behind that wheel. But outside of the issues that you find with clunking noises in the front end and grinding noises from the electric brake or potential leaks, because it's a direct injected engine, it's very high tech. Outputs a lot of power, 550 horsepower to be precise, out of 5-liter V8. That's about 110 horsepower per liter. It's making a lot of power, but that comes at a cost. If you can afford to maintain these, yes, they'll go a long distance. The problem is, A lot of people can't, and they just get very, very expensive to maintain. Many reasons. The older generation Range Rover, not specifically this one, but the older generation previous actually had a timing chain TSB. There was an issue where timing chains break, come apart, and of course interference engine means catastrophic engine failure. These newer ones, I've heard of a few cases with the timing chains breaking, but also the supercharger that's smacked on top has a snorkel that is known to come loose and make a lot of noise, eventually requiring a significant repair. Of course, there's carbon fouling as it's direct injected, so that means long-term maintenance there as well as excessive carbon at the tailpipe. And now that this engine's been out a little while, they're starting to find more and more leaks from coolant reservoirs, radiators, and other hoses and fittings. All this technology and performance crammed under that beautiful hood right there means that it's guaranteed you're going to spend a lot of money keeping this car on the road. Do you think you can get 200,000 miles out of these? I seriously doubt it. I'd love to hear anybody drop a line in the comment section below if you have over 200,000 miles on your Range Rover. So the next one on my list is actually from a glorious BMW yet again. Now it's not this one, this is a 3 Series, but what I'm talking about is the E90 and E92 BMW M3. But let's take a quick look. Just since these BMWs haven't changed all that much, this gives you a good idea of what we're dealing with. But the E90 and E92 BMW M3s, this is clearly a newer car, but either way, the headlights are still very similar, and they've always had the kidney grills, as well as a more aggressive front valence is typical for these as well as the M3. Beautiful alloy wheels. Now these aren't the ones, but again, as I say, they always come equipped. And the E90 and E92 M3s either come with a sunroof or carbon fiber roof. You can also get a carbon fiber mirror as an option, but they all have these great, nice handles that are consistent across the brand. And then circling around, and you'll see the BMWs all have a pretty standard traditional style taillight assembly. But you'll notice with the M3 and M4 of the E90, E92 generation, they'll have 2 sets of tailpipes. But it's that mid-2000s generation M3 that truly has one of the most legendary engines, and it's a V8. And it's the only V8 they ever produced for an M3 car. They produced it for that generation, and then they ended it again. The later models came with a turbo 6. The earlier models came with a straight 6 naturally aspirated. But it's that 4-liter V8 that's naturally aspirated that screams to the moon like a banshee. It's an amazing engine, but it's not made to last. Why? But that's because with the E90 generation M3, it had that V8 that should have been reliable, but it was based on the S85 engine, which was the V10 of the same generation in the M5. The V8 engine in the M3, they called it the S65, and the problem with that was it ate oil, it consumed oil at an alarming rate. Usually a quart per 1,000 to 2,000 miles was in order. The other problem was it generally ate through throttle actuators, which clearly were part of your throttle system, and they had plastic gears, and when they shaved off, bing, engine light, and they stopped working. And the vehicle would unfortunately go into limp mode. Those were about $2,000 a piece, very expensive and difficult to replace. But the bigger issue with that V8 engine was at the bottom, and it's the rod bearings. And that's the interface between the connecting rod and the crankshaft, that's the rotating mass. It's those rod bearings, connecting rod bearings, that would prematurely wear out. It didn't matter what you did. You could have been religious about changing your oil. You could have driven the vehicle like Mother Teresa. It didn't matter. 60, 70, 80,000 miles, and you had to do the rod bearings. Of course, the only fortunate part, you could do that with the engine in the vehicle, but it was still a costly venture, and you pretty much had to treat it like a maintenance item. In addition to that, just because of the expensive repairs that you find, when's the last time you've seen a mid-2000s M3 cruising around? I don't see too many anymore. They don't last. And with all of that said, be sure to click right there. You're going to love it. Some of the best engines on the market today. Hope to see you real soon. Catch you then. Bye-bye.